It is time to begin our prospect breakdowns here on Locked On Pacers. And why not start off with the guy that a lot of people have number one on their draft big boards, Jabari Smith from Auburn. We'll get to it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And today, despite me saying we talk about the Indiana Pacers, we are talking about a player who has not played for the Indiana Pacers and may not ever play for the Indiana Pacers, but it's time to dig into the prospects here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Pacers currently at 5 in the lottery. They can end up anywhere 1 through 9. A lot of guys to talk about. And why not talk about a guy very first who a lot of people have number one on their big board in Jabari Smith for day one of prospect breakdowns. And joining me to talk about him, someone who is very high on him and is one of our Locked On NBA Draft / Locked On Big Board, I don't know the name of it now, Draft Insiders, Richard Stayman at Mavs Draft on Twitter, fresh off of the Portsmouth Invitational. Richard, how you doing? You enjoying this time of year so far?
You know, it's about that time. I'm out of training, watching clips, one of the two every single day, and it's honestly the most fun. And now half the teams in the league, with some getting eliminated, they're all keeping up with the draft. So I'm a big fan of this time of the year.
How many teams are at Portsmouth this year? Did they all go?
Every single team. Every team.
I know that a couple years ago it wasn't quite at every team yet, but I think it's gotten to that point now.
Yeah, being the COVID 2-year pause, I think made the hype better for everybody.
That's great. So we're doing Jabari Smith first. I want to do all the top 4, 5, 6 guys pre-lotto, just in case. I don't know where the Pacers are going to end up yet, but I believe you said you have Jabari Smith number 1 currently on your big board. So before we get into like the whole strengths and weakness and fit discussion thing, just pitch me Jabari Smith, the prospect.
Well, I'm about to. I hope I don't step on some toes here with what I'm going to say eventually down the road with comparisons and whatnot, because it's going to be a bold comparison. But when you're a number 1 pick, I mean, it's kind of not that bold. But I mean, you look at a 3-and-D guy who you can pick some names that are 6'7", 6'6", 6'8". If you add 2 inches and make them 6'10", and be an elite shooter, high-level defender at the very least, a well above average defender, I think a 3-and-D power forward might be one of the most valuable roles in the NBA, and Jabari Smith is elite at that. And I think he has growth to create for himself and score at all 3 levels potentially.
Yeah, his floor is so high. Like, because he's a great shooter and really good defender already, I will no doubt have him top 3 no matter when this is done. Because I haven't watched all of his games, obviously, but the ones I have, like, it's very clear, high-impact defender, super rangy, super long, right? Like, he'll be able to defend a lot of NBA dudes. And the 3-ball being there is also really huge. Took almost 200 of them at Auburn, hit 42%. The free throw percentage is good enough that I think that's legit. His form's really good. All the super generic basic stuff I can say about a prospect to say, yeah, I think he's going to be a good shooter. I have no reason to think he's not going to be a good shooter. So I agree that he's going to be a very good NBA player from my time watching him. And he is interesting to me because something that is one of my biggest concerns with him is also something that makes me think he could be good. And that's that, you know, a lot of guys, when they click in the NBA at some point, it's because when they get a counter for how their biggest strength is stopped. And so I'm going to use Karis LeVert as a random example, but obviously Jabari Smith, I project to be better than Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert was a very good rim attacker, but didn't have a floater, right? So when he got ran off the 3-point line, he was junk. And so after a while, he still wasn't like awesome at it, but he got a floater, and all of a sudden bigs have to step up 1 step, and then he can develop more passing, and he's a better finisher. He's a way harder to guard. And Jabari Smith, for being a good shooter, already is a pretty good like body control, shot selection guy from like inside 10 feet. His 2-point percentage is junk because he's not good at finishing those shots yet. But I think the fact that he takes them the way he does now means he's going to be good at them. And that makes me confident that he can be kind of a self-creator on the NBA level. So I'm both worried that he's not the best finisher inside the arc right now, and that could limit his ceiling, but also kind of intrigued that he's already like he's very willing to take a lot of different shots inside the arc, if that makes any sense. So that was a very long way of saying I'm really high on his floor, and I think that the current skills he has now make his ceiling really intriguing to me.
Yeah, and kind of touching on what you said with the 2-point percentage, he takes so many mid-range shots, as we've learned over the last 10 years of the analytics movement, mid-range isn't exactly the most coveted shot a player can take, but he's so good at them. Like, he loves those mid-range turnaround jump shots. He pretends he's attacking the rim because a 6'10" guy attacking the rim is quite frightening. And then he just stops and pops. Like you said, the finishing does need to get better. That is a huge area of improvement. I think the best reason to be optimistic for that improving in the NBA is that there's no defensive three, or excuse me, there is a defensive three in the NBA like there isn't in college. And that allows for the spacing to clear up for him. I think the NBA spacing will do a lot of favors for his overall offensive weaknesses.
Yeah, at the rim, basically average at the collegiate level, like 0.1%. CBB analytics is what I use for all that. I don't know if you have a different source for shot charge for college, but basically average at the rim. And that, for a 6'10 guy, you'd like it to be a little better, but degree of difficulty very high. And so I always am afraid of the low 2-point percentage stuff. I saw this tweet forever ago about like high level prospects with below 45% 2-point percentage that went in the lottery, and I was like, oh god, that is a frightening list to be on. That's why I think his floor is so important to me, is because those guys were, like, you look at the list, I think Wayne Ellington was the only other one who was like a good shooter, where you're like, oh, because he's 3 and D, I'm not going to put Jabari Smith in with these guys. And from above the break, like on the right elbow, above 50%, above the break left elbow, above 45%. Like, he's got that mid range now. And after watching Chris Duarte excel at those exact shots, I believe he'll have the counters to potentially still be good at that stuff in the NBA. So I have like weird pause and intrigue. I haven't felt like this with a prospect before. I'm like, okay, if I'm like slightly wrong about his 2-pointer, like, he's going to be the best player by far. But if it doesn't elevate at all in the NBA, I would be like, yeah, he's firmly 3. It's very weird that I'm so set on one skill with him, but like, he doesn't like skate by anybody or anything, even though he is good at getting his shot off. So it's just a very interesting offensive prospect.
Yeah, and you said it. I mean, he can get a shot off over anybody. It's an impossible shot to block. He can just shoot over guys the way he rises. He has a high lift and a high release that's unblockable, and the touch is ridiculous. He hits shots at any angle at any part of the floor. I mean, there were parts in the NCAA tournament. He did a trailer 3, just walked into it from the logo, and it's ridiculous. And he made it too. Like, he loves those shots that are tough. And that's why I think as he gets older, especially like by the time he's 23, 24, he's going to be an elite shooter in the NBA. And that's kind of why you overlook some of those 2-point scoring deficits. That's just not his bread and butter.
What I like about him and Banchero is like the footwork mechanic stuff, like you said. Like, it's just so already really polished and smooth. They'll be able to get it off over NBA dudes really quickly, and they're both 6'10", which helps a lot with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think he'll have any trouble getting it off. Defensively is where I think Chet will be probably better than him defensively, but maybe the second best defensive prospect near the top of this draft, at least. There's always some. Where's Herb Jones in this draft? I don't know who that guy is going to be, but the advanced numbers love him defensively, above 2 steal percentage, almost 4 block percentage. Obviously, very nosy on ball and moves really well. Like, I definitely think he'll be good both on ball and team defender in the NBA, and that. Sometimes when I think about the 2-point stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't care about that. If he can be a good defender, like, he'll be on the floor, even if his shot doesn't really project. And that's what I think separate. Like, I used to have a tier of top 4 with Ivy in it, but I cut it now as like a 1-2 tier, Jabari tier, Ivy, because of Jabari's defense. Like, I think he deserves to be top 3 firmly, because I think he could be one of the best 2 defenders in this draft. And that maybe not best 2, but one of the best defenders in this draft. No numbers.
Yeah, and I think when you're in 3 and D and elite at both of those things, and that's your 2 strengths at that size, it's not like, look, there's some elite 3 and D guys on the wings, and they're good players, but they don't necessarily demand like a max contract. Obviously, there are some, like Mikal Bridges will or has. I can't remember if he signed it, but I don't think that there's a question about a 3 and D forward at that size. I mean, I look at it as a Mavs fan, Maxi Kleba, for example. We're seeing him in the playoffs right now, having a really big explosion. And even then, he's getting like an average contract in the NBA. If you figure how much younger Jabari is and how much more room there is to grow, if even he does the same things Maxi does, play high-level defense and high-level shooting, and do that for years, you're going to get almost a max contract.
Low turnover rate, too. Him and Keegan Murray are weird, because they both have like killer advanced stats, and that's the first thing I go to. That's such a bad way to evaluate prospects, but the first thing I do, advanced stats. And him and Keegan Murray, I'm like, damn, that passes like every smell test I have for is this guy good or bad. And the last thing with Jabari that flies past that, huge usage, low turnover guy, right? Like, that's really impressive and suggests that he could be a good handler and creator in the pro level. So a lot to like about Jabari Smith. We'll get to the weaknesses, but a lot to like.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find the weaknesses are pretty small too. So, I mean, like, not to a little bit of a tease there, but the weaknesses aren't so bad either.
Oh, we'll do them. We'll do them right now. But before we talk about those weaknesses, I got to tell you guys about AG1, our new partner here at the Locked On Network that I've been using almost every single day. I started taking it because I didn't really have time in the morning to do anything healthy or get ready for my day. But now I've been using AG1 for a couple weeks, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's a super healthy drink or anything. It's kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to every morning. So what is it? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. And that special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, and aging. All the things you'd want to focus on. It's lifestyle friendly if you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, whatever. It's great for you. And their founder was tired of trying to get all this stuff into his body, and it cost him like $100 a day almost. So we put it all together and made it really easy for everyone. And you can try it too right now. Reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. One scoop of cup in your water every day. That's it. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of this stuff with immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do, visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, hop on over to Locked On NBA Draft or our Locked On Big Board show, where you can hear Richard talk about prospects every day with our many insiders on the Locked On NBA Draft Network. Richard, let's get to weaknesses. You go first. Tell me what you think Jabari Smith's biggest weakness is. I have one, but I want you to go first.
There's no nice way to say it. His slashing is far and away the biggest weakness. I think it kind of plays into his second one, which is he doesn't handle pressure, especially surprise pressure, very well. When he kind of expects things to go the way they are, and when it goes off that train, he gets thrown off, and it's very visible. That's the first weakness for me.
The rule follower, the basketball player rule follower. That's what I always call Goga, because Goga Batadze, he'll catch and he'll expect his teammate to be on the right, so he'll turn to the right, and when no one's there, he has no idea what to do all of a sudden. Even though it's just like a simple turn back and throw it to someone else, it trips him up, and Jabari Smith's kind of like that. Good. That's kind of good sometimes, because that means you're really into patterns. Jabari Smith's defense is really good because he's into patterns, but as you kind of grow, it's really clunky at times, and I agree with that you about Jabari there and the slashing. My first thing, this isn't bad. His free throw rate is not amazing, and which is intriguing to me because he does drive a fair amount, and he's tall, and he's not like contact averse, but he's not like amazing at getting to the line. He's good at finishing his free throws when he gets there. It's not like a hindrance to me, but I would think for a guy that's as good at self-creation as him, he'd be a little higher on the free throw rate scale. I'm not going to call it a weakness necessarily, but when I plug it into the rest of his game and what he does, I'm kind of like, I wish you were a little more effective at getting to the line.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that he doesn't really get a lot of lift on those drives. Like when you see him go and try and attack the rim, it's his weakest athletic moments on the court. Like he very so much doesn't jump high. Those are the only times I see the contact fear, I would say, of going to the rim. That's like the only time that it ever looks noticeable.
He's just kind of like weak sounds so much more critical than I'm trying to say. He's not weak. He's a strong dude, but like when he's in the paint, he almost tries to make it a finish or go around someone or find space that isn't there instead of just like dealing with the contact to get the better shot at the top sometimes. And against LSU, the game I most recently watched that I was messaging you about, that happened a lot, and he struggled in that game. I think all his points that game were free throws or elbow jumpers. I think he made 1 3. Like they kind of showed what I feel like the weakness to be of that free throw stuff, and his weakness in the paint is like when he's deterred in there, he just tries to kind of make it happen and skate around dudes instead of just being like, oh, I'm a little cut off, I should go up and shoot now. It's just not natural for him at that part yet. I think he can get there on that part of growth though.
Yeah, and that's something I think that it's probably a mental growth more than a physically or skilled growth, which is a little bit good. It has its pros and cons, but I think you're going to find a lot of this has to do with mental toughness is a question that I think scouts will have for him.
So we talked about the finishing percentage in general. Average, whatever. Can be better, can be worse. Are you at all concerned that his volume at the rim is pretty low? Because I was kind of like, he's a great shooter, like fantastic shooter. So his 3-point attempt rate should be high, but he doesn't take a ton of shots at the rim. I don't know. I was kind of thrown off by the fact that he only took like 50 shots at the rim the whole season of college. That seems super low to me.
Yeah, again, I think that's one of those things where NBA spacing will favor him because a lot of teams, they don't run two bigs like they do in college. I mean, even at Auburn, they kind of did. Jabari was the power forward, and a lot of times he would be the biggest person on the floor. But he had Walker Kessler, who was a paint beast pretty much at the rim, sometimes stretched the floor. Didn't really do him any favors. The teams could pack the paint against Jabari kind of if they saw the drive, they could all collapse because they knew, again, that surprise pressure. And I do think that again, it goes into that mentality. Will he be able to take contact, really know how to learn how to finish over defenders at the rim in traffic? That's going to be a huge swing skill for him in coming as a star.
Are you going to tell me that a college team didn't have good spacing?
I know this is really hard for you to process. I'll give you a second to think about this.
The NCAA tournament, first of all, I hate that people take these big conclusions from the NCAA tournament about prospects, but I can't get into some of these games where like two dudes are on the block. I'm like, what is going on? How do you expect to score? I just don't get it. I don't get college basketball.
It's horrible. Just wait till you find the game, and this happens like once every at this rate, you could find every third game you're watching, you'll see it, where somebody makes a pass to the corner, but surprise, their teammate is also in the corner with them. That's the best.
Only a few teams, like Villanova does kind of too big stuff, but they like X out a lot and get away with it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, you're making space or making it work. Although they have a different coach now, so maybe even they will be miserable to watch.
Those days are over. Yeah, those days are over.
Like some painful stuff, and that definitely impacted Jabari. But he did on the defensive end. You know, I've only watched, like I said, 3 full games. I didn't get a good feel for like if he's guarding someone in the post, because in the pros, if you're 6'10", you're going to be a small ball 5 at some point. Like maybe that's not where he ends up naturally, but 5-10 minutes a game at some point he will be playing small ball 5. What do you feel like that's a weakness? Do you feel like he'll be okay there? Because given how I feel like he did as a finisher, as we just talked about being a little contact averse, he might not be awesome at it right away, but I don't want to write it off without having a ton of good film on it.
Yeah, offensively, I don't know. I don't think it changes a ton. I think it actually kind of plays to his strengths a little bit more as a 3-point spread, to stretch the floor. And on defense, it's really interesting because on defense, he doesn't care about any contact. He is absolutely fearless. And in fact, he loves initiating the contact more than anything. So I think on defense, it'll favor him more than offense, but offense, it also does play to his strength as a stretch big. I mean, you put him out there, put him against Rudy Gobert, Tada, you've neutralized Rudy really well.
You talked about the pressure thing earlier about how he's not like great at dealing with that. I think that kind of plays into, and I brought the rule follower thing. The passing is not very advanced. It's not bad. Like if he sees, he'll know where his teammate is and get him the ball. It's a good pass. It's not like low or whatever. He's not going to throw anybody open at this stage. It's kind of strange that he can read the game as well as he does, but he's never 2 steps ahead. He's maybe 1 step ahead, but I've never seen him like, or at least so far, been like, oh wow, he dined that dude up to create that basket, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and you're not going to see that. I think that's a really good point. You'll see him a little bit advanced, and I think the area you would see that 2 steps ahead kind of thing is really as a scorer. I think when he realizes a double is coming, I think that's a huge growth area for him if he can figure out how to score before the defense gets there, pass as the defense is coming to put him in no man's land. Things like that. I think the scoring is the area where, and defense, of course, where you'll see him be a little bit 2 steps ahead and take those advanced reads. As a passer, you absolutely will not see that.
Another development thing, though, I want to bring up here. Again, like with Karras, not comping these players one bit, right? Ben Simmons comes into the NBA, brilliant defensive reader of the game. And he became a really good passer as a result of that. And I wonder, again, Jabari Smith's not ever. I don't even think Jabari will get close to Ben Simmons' level of passing. But his off-ball defense is good enough that I wonder, like, man, he reads the game well enough that I think he could be a good passer. I don't know if that development will happen the same way it necessarily did for Simmons or some of those other guys who they have that level of recognition and boom, it just clicks for them one day. Like Garland had it this year in inverse, right? He was an awesome passer coming out of Vandy, and the defense stepped up this year, and a lot of the Cavs defense got a lot better this year. But like that does happen with dudes who are really good at that pattern recognition stuff. I think he will be a better passer than he is right now, but I'm not sure what the ceiling of that is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it would depend on how that driving gets better because if he can drive successfully and then as he's driving recognize where teammates are, whether it be corner shooters, dump offs below the rim, I think that would help him a lot as a playmaker.
Anything else we're missing on the weakness front here?
I'd say just one other thing that kind of go hand in hand. It's 1A, 1B. He needs to tighten his handle out. Needs to grow that handle, and more importantly, he loves this step back jump shot he has. But the problem is, and you probably know where I'm going with this, he doesn't really create a ton of space. He doesn't really step back. He moves back. Like he has a foot forward. He does like a plant, and then just goes back to whichever foot was behind. He goes, okay, I'm going to shoot it from there now, instead of like a true step back. Like, I mean, obviously I'm spoiled. I see Luka Doncic play every game, and he has like the best step back in the game right now. So it's a little bit, maybe I have high standards or something, but I just wish he would create a little bit more space on that step back that he uses a lot.
Chris Duarte has broken me, and let me tell you why. I rank Chris Duarte low 20s, like 21, 22 last year. I can't remember exactly what. And a lot of that was because he had this exact problem. He did not create a lot of space on his jumper at Oregon. And I was like, man, you get to the NBA, the defenders are better. You're not awesome at getting to the rim. You're not a good passer. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to get your shot off in the NBA. And then he could pretty easily. Like Tatum, again, way better than Duarte, but same thing. At Duke, he was like not awesome at space creation, couldn't get the shot off like all the time, couldn't get to the rim that much. NBA, no problem, right? He figures it out. So that's a weird one because I agree. He does that a lot from the elbows where he'll like have one foot in the paint and look like he's about to drive and then he just shoots. And it's like, okay, he goes in enough that it's not a big deal, but it's like, okay, interesting. And Duarte broke me because he got to the NBA and no problem, right? Shots off, no problem. Doesn't matter who's defender is, he's getting it up. And so maybe I'm like overthinking the getting the shot off against college level guys. It's been a problem for a lot of dudes, so maybe I'm not, but just seeing a guy easily overcome it, like no hurdles whatsoever. I'm like, man, have I been overthinking that skill this whole time?
I mean, to be fair, I think there's exceptions and circumstances within the rule. Chris Duarte being his age, 20, how old he is now. He might be 14 by now. No, just kidding. I think that does help, though, the maturity kind of that he doesn't have to overcome that obstacle that other young players do. So it does vary. I usually agree, though. Like if you can't create space in college, what makes me think that you're going to create space and be able to quickly shoot over defenders in the NBA where they're better athletes, longer athletes, and better defenders?
Yeah, Duarte, that thing, like his first year at Oregon was a pretty similar like shot diet to Jabari, and then he figured out the 2-pointers his second year there. But then his turnovers went way up, his usage. It's just they're different. It's impossible to compare them. But I'm now broken in terms of getting your shot off and what that actually means when the NBA comes. Let's talk about his fit on the Pacers. I don't want to do too much of that because sometimes who knows what teams change every day in the NBA now. Like it's a little easier this year for the Pacers than in past drafts because last year was a little bit about how prospects would fit with Sabonis, but no one knew what the Pacers would look like long term. The center breakup was going to happen eventually. Now they have Halliburton, who's like, this dude's going to be on the team for a while, right? So I have a little bit more of an idea of how to talk about guys fit on this team, or at least with their now best young player. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the good folks over at Built Bar who are making the best tasting protein bars ever. Richard, do you have a favorite flavor of Built Bar?
I'm about to give you the most generic answer of all time.
Uh-oh.
The cookies and cream, man. It is undefeated. It is absolutely undefeated.
That is a good one. I'm a peanut butter brownie guy myself. For those unaware, Built Bar is, like I just said, the best tasting protein bars ever. But because they're all 100% covered in chocolate, they basically taste like a candy bar, right? A lot of the ones you get in the store, they're like a weird square flavor. They look like a Pop-Tart almost. They're not very good, or they're really rubbery, and they're just gross. Built Bar's 100% covered in chocolate. All taste delicious. So many good flavors. The texture matches the flavor. There's something for everybody, and they're all low calorie, high protein, so they're healthy for you to eat almost every day if you want. You can use it as a snack or a meal replacement, however you feel. You can see all the macros right on their website, but most of them have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Way healthier than a candy bar. My favorite is the peanut butter brownie, but there's something for everybody on that website. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 when you check out. You'll get 15% off your order. That promo code, again, is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NBA to hear about the latest and greatest news from around the league, including Bucks, Bulls, Warriors, Nuggets, Hawks, Heat, Suns, Pelicans. Great Sunday of NBA hoops, and it'll all be on Locked On NBA. Jabari Smith on the Pacers, and I have to be careful here because I'm very concerned that as I do more of these prospect breakdowns, that this segment will just become, how does this player fit with Tyrese Halliburton? I don't want to just do that. I need to make sure the Pacers ecosystem, Chris Duarte, Isaiah Jackson, like all the factors that matter are at play. That said, starting with Halliburton, they are a damn good fit together to me.
on both ends. I mean,
Yeah.
on offense, I mean, let's start there. Like Jabari Smith didn't have a real point guard who, how do I put this nicely? Jabari Smith didn't have a real point guard who was heavily pass first at Auburn. Like the guard play was the downfall of Auburn, the at one time number one team in the country. And Jabari's offense was a little bit almost limited in that way where he didn't, I don't know how, I never really recall him running pick and rolls outside of quick pick and pops. But I can't imagine Halliburton running those pick and rolls with him. I think that takes him to another level. And who knows, maybe those rolls, that could be what unlocks Jabari's finishing. Maybe he sets him up for lobs, something like that. That could be a huge fit for him.
And then he'll have to get better at passing by default because he'll get cut off on the roll. Boom, there we go. We solved the puzzle that is Jabari Smith. Yes, I think that even if he never becomes this awesome screener because he'll be a shooting threat, his fit with Halliburton will be very good. They need a defender at that position so badly. Watching the Pacers on defense this year just ruined me. I mean, it was really painful. So I love that fit. Not even, and the screening is interesting because I think you're right. That was always actually interesting to me in another just college basketball qualm. It's just that he popped a lot, but he was a good shooter. So it's not like I was like, oh, why are they doing that? It's just like, oh, can you show me what it looked like if he went down the lane, even if he's going to run into their center that can't move 5 feet from the basket? Can I just see it happen just to see what happens? But yeah, I think that fit will be great. And, Banchero I think he's better or will be better than Jabari Smith, but he is not as built for transition as Jabari Smith is to me. And Halliburton and the Pacers in general and Carlisle are like, hey, we're going to get the rebound and we're going. Like, Tyrese, you are really fast with the ball. You make good decisions, like, go. And I think that is a place where they can fit really well together. We haven't even talked about, like, Jabari's athletic enough that the out there will be there, right? We saw that Halliburton plus Isaiah Jackson was a good fit. Like, I think that will be a very natural part of the strength of the Pacers going forward as well, if they obviously end up together, is that part of the game will be supernatural.
Yeah, and I was looking at the team ranks. I mean, with all due respect, transition was a weakness. Transition defense, especially.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And then also I was looking through Synergy. Like, that's my source on this. Their pick and roll ball handler defense was their second most play defended. They ranked last. The pick and roll man, so where they actually utilized the pick and roll in terms of finding the cutter, I guess the roll man, obviously. It was pretty self-explanatory, but here I am. They were also 30th. So they were the worst pick and roll team in the NBA. If you get a good defender, automatically that improves. That no matter what his strength or weakness in pick and roll is, if he is a good defender, everything that you see on ball and pretty good off ball, you're probably going to get better at that. That's going to be a huge area that he improves. And I think I completely agree. I mean, in terms of transition, Jabari is 100% going to be the best option at the top, I think, of the players. I mean, outside of Jaden Ivey, but of the top four, Jabari is probably the number one transition option, excuse me.
I think Ivy will be better than in transition, but with Halliburton, it's like only one guy can race up the floor with the ball. It's not, I don't want to knock Ivy for that, but the defensive thing's interesting. I mean, in terms of the pick and roll defense, yeah, he'll help on the roll man part, especially. Like, O'Shea Brissett's a pretty good weak side defender, and Miles Turner's obviously a pretty good pick and roll defender. That's kind of it in terms of what they had last year in terms of capable guys to help stop that action or to actually stop that action. And you talked about his fit with Halliburton being good on defense, and like I think Jabari Smith being good at those things that O'Shea Brissett in particular were good at defensively this year will help. But nothing about, I'm pretty high on Tyrese Halliburton in general, but I am lower on his defense than most people, I think. And I don't know that anything about their fit necessarily or the way they would combine makes me think that they're like the dream fit on defense, beyond that they're both just like pretty smart players.
Yeah, I don't think, there's no like standout skill that makes me like excited about that for either guy, really, that in that pairing on defense at least. But it's the idea again. I mean, like, I think defense is a lot of individual stuff that obviously the collective matters the most. But when you've got individual talent like those two, I think it does automatically help the defense improve.
Yeah, it'd be hard for the Pacers defense to not improve next year. So any prospect, I could look at the data next year and be like, they look at how much they helped. They took them from 28th to not 28th. Another thing I like, and this is a little, the problem with all this, like I said, is the rosters change so much. Your team situation changes so much. It's hard to say how long this could be the case for, but like, as long as Rick Carlisle is the coach, he is very like, if you're in the game, you know this, you watched all the matches. If you're in the game, I'm letting you shoot the three. Like, I don't care who you are. I'm not going to put you in if I don't trust you to shoot. Like, if you're in, you can shoot. TJ McConnell had to work on his three this year to get threes up. Like, Sabonis took more threes this year. He doesn't care. If you're in, you can shoot. And so for a guy like Jabari, that is great. He's a good shooter. And so that fit makes sense to me. And, there will be less time it takes for him to kind of click from three or get those reps to then practice his counters. And, the offensive development will come quickly, I think, in Carlisle's system, not necessarily because he'll have the ball all the time, but just because the stuff he's good at is something that Carlisle will encourage to the point that it'll allow him to kind of swim faster than he'll sink, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and the Pacers finished 25th in 3-point percentage. When we're talking about this elite shooter, that number is
a lot of bad shooters last year.
The way I think about it is like you could put this probably is an unrealistic lineup, but maybe it isn't, because I know Buddy did play the small forward, but you have a shooting lineup where you could have actually one of the best 5-man shooting lineups in the league of Tyrese Halliburton, Chris Duarte, Buddy Hield, Jabari Smith, Miles Turner. You have a shooter that, it's an automatic mismatch, right? And they all have other skills on one end of the floor, some defense, some passing, some secondary skill that really stands out. So, except maybe Buddy, but the others, I love that lineup together. It really would shoot the lights out with Rick Carlisle. It's perfect.
Duarte's enough 3-and-D that I think he could basically fit with anybody. So I have no, I don't really have concerns on any outside of, guys who have the ball a lot. I have no real fit concerns with any of the Pacers' young guys. Like Isaiah Jackson does not need the ball to be good. And Halliburton can get anybody the ball as long as he's the guy with the ball. I actually was into the fit of Halliburton plus Brogdon for a while. But then when Halliburton played, oh crap, I'm about to forget something I was about to say that was very profound. Oh, when Halliburton played with McConnell, it actually kind of made me realize how weird it is when he doesn't have the ball all the time. So outside of guys who need the ball, anyone can fit with what the Pacers have system-wise with their young guys right now. And I'm projecting that a lot of those young guys will be back because they just won 25 games. So yeah, I think he'd fit his skills. Jabari Smith would fit pretty well with what they already have in place. And what I want defensively, this is not a fit thing, this is just something I want to see, is Jabari Smith and Isaiah Jackson at 3-4. Not at 4-5, at 3-4. Because then they'd have long, super quick athletic dudes who can block everything, just running around chasing dudes. And they might get overpowered for the first couple of years because neither of them are strong or bulky at this stage. But that would be fun for me. I would love to watch that.
Hey, I would not be opposed. And I do think there is a real possibility that Jabari Smith could be a small forward in some lineups. The same way we talk about him going up, he could probably scale down because the skill set of the lack of finishing, I think that actually does make him, in a weird way, it makes him more flexible in that regard. Where, you think of a 4-5 who always has to be near the rim at some point. Jabari doesn't have to be that. A lot of threes just stay on the wings.
Let's talk about a bad defender that makes me think Jabari Smith can actually play the three. That's Lauri Markkanen with the Cavs, right? If you can shoot well enough, there's a point where doesn't matter, just you're a perimeter guy. I'm not comparing the players, obviously, but Markkanen with the Cavs was yeah, I can shoot and put the ball on the floor, and they're like, great, you're playing the three, and it worked. It was good for them, so I think he can do it.
Yeah, you never know. It all depends on who's around him.
So someone who is terrible at context and listening is going to say, wow, I just compared Jabari Smith to Karis LeVert, Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, and Lauri Markkanen all in one show. That's not good. That's not a good show for comparison's sake. So to get real, are you a comps guy? Do you like doing comps?
Yeah,
okay, I hate comps,
it's fun.
But if you do, I'm gonna make you do it because I hate comps.
I hate the pressure of them, but I actually like them because it does paint a general picture of who you're trying to say, hey, think of this, and then take some and give some, and I think that kind of gives a good image of what someone is.
So I hate comps. Not you don't do this necessarily, but a lot of times I see comps as the best player who fits the mold, right? Not the normal player who fits the mold. It's always the best player. I forget who it was. And now I'm going to be annoyed. It was a pretty good center from one of the last few drafts who ended up going lottery, but not really high. Doesn't matter. Someone was oh, I think they're a combination of Al Horford and Boogie. And I was that's the number one pick.
Wendell Carter?
Yes, I think it was Wendell Carter.
Had to be.
And Wendell Carter is good. But I was wait, if that's who you think this guy is, he's one. You don't, no one else goes above Al Horford and DeMarcus Cousins together. And I get why you'd think they have aspects of both of their games, but that's why I hate comps. People always take it to the umptillionth degree of what player could be. That said, I do agree with you that they can be valuable if you get the right guy or the right prototype Do you have a comp for Jabari Smith? Now that I have shit on comps, I'm gonna make you
Yeah,
one.
Kevin Durant meets LeBron. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I did tease at the top of the episode. The comp is rather ludicrous. So hear me out. It takes some. This is one of those that paints the picture. It's not a 1-to-1, and it is extreme because I don't even like comparing guys at the top to most all-stars. Like an all-star couple times is mostly what I like comparing to. It's just I know the odds of guys hitting like that is low. So I hate what I'm about to do, but I can't get it out of my head. If you made it, man, I'm going to get roasted. So be prepared.
I'll
If you
mute
made
you.
Klay Thompson 6'10" and took away some of that on-ball ability, I think you got
Okay.
Jabari Smith. You made
Okay.
obviously not the shooter either because like Klay Thompson's arguably the best shooter, or he's in that discussion. So like unfair to put that on Jabari, but that same just title of elite shooter, really, really high level defender that could flirt with all defense. That's what you've got, and add a few inches and take away some of the ball skills. So I know it's not 1-to-1, but like they do have similar play styles.
Yeah, when Klay became an all-star for the first time, when he put together his 2-pointers and it went from 44% to 48% as he mastered his counters as a 3-point shooter in his fourth year in the NBA. We have done it. We have solved the Jabari Smith comp. That's not bad to me.
Not even
That
Jabari
was
Smith.
something that Klay. What?
We solved the NBA draft.
I want to look up Klay Thompson's college stats now just to see what his 2-point percentage was at Washington State. Yeah, this is not terrible. That's pretty good. Okay,
Hey, you know what? Not terrible was like how I went through high school and college, so that is a massive win.
Yeah, I need to not do what I just did with people who actually study the draft. To be like, I hate comps. No, give me one. I need to only do that to people who are bad at comps. that was not a good way to do this. I have nothing else to say about Jabari Smith. So if you'd like to eulogize or give a thesis, go ahead. But I'm out of stuff. I think everybody's got kind of the picture of who he is.
Yeah, so I'll kind of just top this out with the best case, worst case. I do this on my scouting reports. I do the role that I see them playing, and then like best case, worst case, what happens in those scenarios. So the ideal role, I think he is a starting power forward that you expect to be like a 3-and-D guy, plays 30 minutes a game, kind of just a high-level starter, flirts with all-star bids. I think that's pretty realistic. The exceeding expectations, that best case is really that 3-point shot translates, defense translates, and it turns into some more rim protection than we got to see at Auburn. Obviously, he had the best shot blocker, arguably the best shot blocker in the last 10 years in the country next to him. So I think that's a hidden skill that could evolve as rim protection. And then if he learns how to use his handle, because it's not like he's Stanley Hudson dribbling the ball. He knows how to dribble.
That is an awesome niche reference. That is fantastic.
He has inside out moves. He's a little bit hesitant to use them. Can some of that stuff scale up to the NBA? I think that's an absolute best case scenario because then you've got yourself a star, no question. The worst case really is the handle never develops. The 2-point shooting, like you said, he relies too much on mid-range over finishing, which could be something that could be a little bit exposed in some regards. And really, he just never learns how to create space. I mean, that's a big thing. I think that's really the weaknesses. But even under that weaknesses, you're getting probably a starter.
I have him top 3, and I think at this stage I don't think it's possible for me to take him out of that. So, damn good player. I mean, I don't have much. If you're gonna go top, this draft is not like amazing. It's about average, I'd say. The top's pretty good though, and so to be in that tier is impressive. And I think he will be a good NBA player, mostly because I am very bullish. If I did a floor-only board, which would be a stupid exercise, but if I did, he'd probably be 1 or 2. I think he'd be really high up there. Thank you for the time, Richard. Where can people follow you in all your work? And do not talk about the Mavs, just about the draft.
Everything I post goes through my Twitter at Mavs Draft. So I post scouting reports almost daily or mock drafts on mavsdraft.com. And then Locked On NBA Big Board is now the new name. I'm on every Tuesday with Rafael Barlow. So those are the 3 places.
I'm fired. I'm fired from the network for getting that wrong twice in this show. Locked On.
I called it the wrong thing on my day too, so understandable.
Tomorrow, I think what we're going to do now for the off, I should have been more clear here. For the Locked On Pacers podcast going forward, I think every week's probably going to be 2 prospect recaps, 2 player season recaps, and then 1 free agency preview, whether that's a player on the Pacers who's about to be a free agent or a position group, point guard, shooting guard, whatever. Because it's off-season mode now. We've done all the season recapping that we can. So look out for that. Tomorrow will probably be our first player recap unless the guest situation lines up for another prospect review. Who knows? So thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.